Our next very successful EPP Prime Minister, colleagues, friends, has brought last year his country into the Schengen area and into the Euro area, and with this I think we say everything. He has put Croatia at the heart of the European Union. Croatia is fully integrated, is influencing decisions, it's taking part in all decisions at European Union level, and it is benefiting from European funds, from European integration more than ever. The Prime Minister of Croatia, Andrej Plenković, welcome to Greece. And dear colleagues, the EPP is the largest political family at European level. 12 prime ministers, heads of state and government out of 27. It's the largest political group in the European Parliament, and we are going to the European election now knowing that we are going to win the election, we are going to remain the largest political force, and we are going to lead Europe, continue to lead Europe in the next 5 years. A big merit in this has our President of the European People's Party and Chairman of the EPP Group in the European Parliament, Manfred Weber. Each of our three distinguished guests will address you, dear colleagues, will share their most important ideas with you. Afterwards, we're going to have a discussion because the EPP is the open political family. We're transparent. We're happy to have an interactive discussion. Prime Minister Mitsotakis, the floor is yours for your introductory remarks.
Well, thank you very much for your kind introduction. Dear Manfred, dear Andrej, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, welcome to Athens. It's a real pleasure to be hosting what I think is going to be a very interesting and informative debate. It also gives us an opportunity to compare notes about a topic of great importance to all of us. And I'll just ditch my prepared remarks and share some very quick thoughts with you, trying to remember the thought process that went through those difficult months during the pandemic when we actually created what is Next Generation EU, the core component of the Recovery and Resilience Fund. And I remember back in March 2020 when we 8 of us co-signed a letter addressed at the time to the President of the European Council and the President of the Commission, asking for an extraordinary reaction to what indeed was an extraordinary crisis. And of course, I'm referring to the pandemic. And at the time, many thought that what we were suggesting at the time was inconceivable. Yet, I think it is testimony to the ability of Europe to come up with very innovative solutions under pressure. The fact that in July, 4 months later, we actually agreed to something which was unprecedented. And essentially, what did we agree to? That we would borrow at the supranational level, at the level of the European Union, and we would direct those funds through a combination of grants and loans to member states based on their relative economic position, so weaker countries would receive more support, but also based on a very detailed plan that the member states needed to submit, which needed to be in line with the overall priorities of the European Union regarding the green and digital transformation, social cohesion and competitiveness. And indeed, Andrej remembers that negotiation well, or I'm not even sure if we remember it well because it was all very fuzzy with lots of all-nighters and some more wine than necessary at 3 or 4 in the morning. But the final agreement, I think, caught a lot of Eurosceptics by surprise, and the EPP was at the forefront of this agreement. But of course, then the difficult job started because we had the commitment. And we had to come up with a plan and a structure, a governance structure, to make sure that the plan would be properly implemented. And it took us a lot of effort to actually come up with a very detailed plan that combined investments and reforms, submitted to the European Commission, one of the first plans to be approved, which in my mind remains a very balanced plan that pays tribute to the priorities that were laid out at the beginning when we designed this program, digital transformation of the state, but also of businesses, and digital education of citizens, employment growth, social cohesion, and of course the green transition. And the plan is very clear. We want to create 200,000 new jobs. That's why we called it also Greece 2.0. And I think the big success of the plan was that we combined it with important reforms, which, however, unlike what happened in the past, were not reforms imposed upon us by our lenders, but reforms that had a great amount of Greek ownership, reforms that were part of our political program, which we actually were quite eager to implement. Hence, the conditionality element of this reform was not a problem for us. If anything, it puts maybe a little bit more pressure on the ministers, because they know that they have very specific milestones and targets which they need to meet. And that is why we place so much emphasis on the governance of the program, because, as you know, the conditionality and the auditing process is very, very strict. And it needs to be, because that is the only way to ensure maximum transparency. But I think under the leadership of our alternate minister, Mr. Papathanasis, we have created a framework that imposes the necessary discipline. And, there's nothing worse for a minister to know that if, they fail to meet a single milestone, a whole disbursement could be delayed. And I'm sure they don't want to put themselves in that position, so they all try a little bit harder to make sure that this doesn't happen. So we'll have a chance to discuss in greater detail afterwards the specific components of the plan. But what I do want to re-emphasize is that, dear Manfred, it was the EPP and the EPP leaders that actually were at the forefront of this transformative step. And I need to mention it here, it was Angela Merkel who changed her mind. She was dead against it at the beginning, and she understood that she needed to take a step back, make this compromise, because it was for the good of Europe. And this is, at the end of the day, what distinguishes our political family. We can look at the big picture, the big European picture, and always do what is the right thing for Europe. Again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for hosting this event.
Good day. Thank you very much, dear Kyriakos. Thank you very much, dear Manfred, dear Siegfried, for this kind invitation to be today in Athens and to attend the EPP Road to Recovery conference. I have an almost déjà vu. It was more or less a similar nice hotel, similar nice grouping of commissioners, ministers, MPs, MEPs, leaders of the EPP when Siegfried brought this conference to Zagreb last February. So I am fully aware why Croatian EPP politicians and Greek European EPP politicians are keen to see how the progress is being done on the implementation of the EU Next Generation. First of all, congratulations to Nea Δημοκρατία for all fantastic electoral successes. We were all supporting you, and I have to admit that your last year's performance was close to perfection, and I really admire everything that you have done for Greece and for the Greek people over the past couple of years, not only by stopping the walk in the park in terms of preventing the illegal migration, but also for the strong economic recovery that you have done for the Greek society. And this is being seen, valued, and appreciated across Europe. Few points on the EU Next Generation. I was looking a little bit at the tables, the comparative tables, and you see that the Next Generation EU puts Greece and Croatia at the top when it comes to relation of the funds available and the GDP. For you it's 18% and for us it's 15%. This is a small table. Greece is first and Croatia is second. That means that this instrument or this invention that we have done back in 2020 has really played a major role in recovering from the economic consequences of the restrictive measures during the greatest pandemic over the last 100 years. Both of us who were involved in these negotiations back in 2020, it was just after the end of the first ever Croatia's Council presidency, the beginning of the German presidency. I even had elections on the 5th of July and went from Brussels, from the same European Council, home to form a government and came back to the same European Council. This was like a nice footnote in the history of the European Union Council meetings. But my point is the following. This was really a big answer to a very big problem. And for many of us, it was a very efficient answer. In terms of the allocation that Croatia has in this financial perspective, the usual allocation, cohesion, agriculture and other policies, we are around 15 billion euros. On top of it, we got 10.5 billion euros from the EU Next Generation. And we made a very strict complementary exercise that is now boosting our public investments, that is helping us reconstruct the capital of Zagreb after the terrible earthquake which we had in March 2020, that is helping us to reconstruct the region of Sisak, which is close to the capital from the big earthquake in December 2020, but is also helping us to invest in an unprecedented manner into our educational infrastructure, health infrastructure, justice administration infrastructure, but most of all, helping us to push our economic operators and also bring Croatia to the higher level of the energy infrastructure that we are all trying to upgrade given the energy crisis that we endured as a consequence of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. The management of this process I have fully taken on board in my office as a Prime Minister, because I felt that the deadlines for the implementation, and that is the end of 2026, was so strict that we needed not only to prepare good plan, to put high benchmarks and indicators, all complementary with digital green and do not do significant harm, so that the management is basically done in a way that every 2 weeks I control every single ministry, how they're doing in terms of tenders, in terms of implementing reforms. And so far, we were not behaving as if we were from Southeast Europe, but more as if we were from Switzerland. We fulfilled 120 of 120 indicators, which is highly unlikely in our culture. You might understand me a little bit. But we did it very seriously because we wanted to have an additional push in the moment where Croatia was achieving its strategic positioning into deeper European integration. Siegfried mentioned both the Eurozone and Schengen. I'm grateful for Kyriakos' and, of course, the entire EPP's help, especially our friends in the European Parliament, but also in the Council and Ursula in the Commission, for attaining this goal. And in that way, the next generation has really helped us to boost investments. It was an interesting information I received just before coming to Greece. The Belgian National Bank has analyzed how we are implementing the national and recovery plans, and they said that their assessment is that these funds are doubling the level of the public investment in Croatia. So the Belgian National Bank, someone that is very far away from us and not looking at us in any partisan or effective manner. This is very good. Also, the credit rating agencies, and Croatia has managed to upgrade its credit rating in my mandate for 4, let's say, steps. We are now in the investment level with the positive outlook. All of them have signaled that the implementation of the Next Generation EU has been going smoothly and has been contributing to the economic growth. And when I look at the numbers, in 2016, when I became the Prime Minister, our GDP nominal was 47 billion euros. We will end 23 when the accounts settle with 75 billion euros, meaning that we have brought Croatia in terms of GDP per capita from 11,600 euros to 20,000 euros in a span of 7.5 years. This instrument that we created jointly, and I think Europe should be proud about it, really made a difference. When it comes to the other countries, what we noticed that those very well off economically and highly developed countries, they not only received less money at the beginning, but some of them are not showing similar interest in the implementation. And this is important to understand when we will come to, very soon, I guess, especially through the European Parliament activities, to the evaluation of this exercise. And I think from the first-hand look, the countries of the Mediterranean and the countries of Central and Eastern Europe have seized the moment for this next generation EU mechanism. Others a bit less, because their starting point was very different. But my political message is, and I fully agree with Kyriakos, we delivered fast, we delivered big. Some of us will have big additional boost to our economic development, and I think that this instrument, as one of the elements of the crisis management, as the time will pass, will prove to be very successful, both by grants and loans, and the added value it has brought to our economies and our development. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kalimera, first of all. I want to welcome all of you. It's great to have a full room today in our EPP group event here in Athens. Great to have two prime ministers, successful prime ministers, Kyriakos, Andrei, among us. Let me first thank all those who made this possible. Siegfried is our lead vice president organizing this show, which is showing like the exercise that we are successful with the recovery fund. So Siegfried, thank you so much for doing so. I have Vangelis in front of me. He is an experienced colleague, a strong pillar in the EPP family on the European level. And it's great to have him because he's connecting the European Parliament with the national parliaments. Vangelis, thank you so much. I have other friends from the Parliament with us. Lucas was there from our Cypriot friends. So welcome to all of them. I also want to welcome Margaritis Ginas, the #1 Greek in Brussels, Vice President of the EPP team there. Thank you so much for all your work. And I want to also welcome the man who was sent from Athens to accompany me on the party side. It's Thanasis who is with us as Secretary General of the party. Thanasis, thanks for all your service, what you do. And let me thank also you all, because European People's Party is leaders' party. We have strong leaders, but we are also People's Party, and we are Mayor's Party, first of all. That's why all Geert and all the friends from the local branches, the mayors, the governors on the ground, the European People's Party is the biggest mayor party of Europe. We are on the ground elected. We have trust by the citizens. And all the things we discuss in Brussels or on national level cannot be implemented without our mayors on the ground. That's why thank you for your service, for your contribution. We are proud to be the Mayor's Party of Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, the starting point is again to underline the success story of Greece. It was this morning already several times mentioned, and I also want to do it, that the Economist placed Greece as #1 of the best performing economies in the world. Great success story from a Greek point of view. And I think it has mainly to do with the strong and forward-looking leadership of Kyriakos Mitsotakis. I want to thank him for this, because it was his political project to bring Greece back. And having in mind the history I think a lot of us don't want to be remembered, but there was once a time of Tsipras and Varoufakis and these kind of people. Having this period of time in mind, dear friends, the success story of the last years is even more impressive to see. Greece is back, Greece is respected in the world, Greece is a strong economy, and it is producing a positive direction for the citizens of Greece. And thanks to Kyriakos, you did it. Thank you so much for doing so. The pillars of this success story are typical EPP things. The readiness to reform internally. The readiness to build up trust again. Greek bonds are now again serious investments now on global level. The question to trust in people, as I said it with mayors, that we do it on the ground practically, is part of this success story. To use the necessary funds, the European solidarity of the Recovery Resilience Fund, in a reasonable way, is part of this success story. And let me add, we praise today the success story of the investments, but let not underestimate, we borrowed 750 billion euros as Europeans. 750 billion euros. That is a huge message of solidarity, but that's also a huge responsibility for the future. Someone has to pay the interest rates. Someone has to pay it back, the money. So that's why what we are doing is exactly using solidarity on European level, but doing it in a responsible way, creating perspective for the future. And, dear colleagues, I also want to mention that all these things are based on our understanding on rule of law. We had the last days some debate in the European Parliament about this. I just want to say the European People's Party is in Greece and all over Europe the party of rule of law. We managed in Poland to kick PiS out of office. It was Donald Tusk, it was EPP. We don't need anyone give us lecture and any kind of advice on rule of law here in Greece and in the rest of the European Union. And we will continue to do so. This kind of leadership in Greece, we see the same kind of leadership in Croatia. And Andrei, it was already mentioned with Schengen and Euro, huge steps. You know, you don't see it when you look to the Prime Minister. He is a quite young Prime Minister, I have to say. Because I say this because Croatia is our youngest member in the European Union family. So also led by a strong Prime Minister. And if I may say so, seeing this leadership, then the DNA, the nature of EPP politics is that we are not creating problems like the populists, that we are not speaking only about problems like the left ideological approaches. What we are doing, what our leaders are doing is solving problems, and that's the DNA of EPP. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here as a party leader and I'm proud, but I'm standing here also as a German, and I have to say I'm quite jealous about what you deliver here in Greece. Because in Germany we have now a left government since years, and you know we are since 2 quarters in recession in Germany. France is only having a 0 point a little bit growth in this moment of time. Greece and Croatia has above 2% in 2023. That's the nature of EPP leadership. I tell you, it's not about the question whether you are a German or a Greek. It's a question whether you have a left government or whether you have a center-right government of EPP, whether you have ideological approach or whether you have serious leadership like we see it in these 2 countries. That is, let me say, the starting point. And let me say our today's event in February 2024 also as a ramp for decision in June, when Europeans are asked to give Europe a new direction, their direction. We can go in front of voters and tell them that we delivered on the answer on Corona, also the question that everybody had the same access to vaccines. There was no first and second class European. We all did this together. The answer to the war in Ukraine was also a joint answer. Europe was managed by EPP leadership in the last years, and I think we can tell people it was in good hands. That is a starting point for the campaign. And then the next point is to give an idea about the future. And our idea about future are 2 main basic principles. In a fast-changing world, we have to keep the economic strength of this continent as a whole. The industrial base must be secured for the future. and we are losing ground economically on global stage. That's why we have to put competitiveness, economic strengths, jobs and decent incomes in the center of our campaign. And the second pillar is for us to keep the strongest and most important promise of Europe, to have peace inside of the European Union. To keep this promise, therefore we need in this absolutely changing world a strong defense pillar for Europe, to be together, capable to defend ourselves against all the enemies on all sides of our continent. That are the two main pillars for us. And again, the debate about the recovery fund is giving us certainty that we can convince people, we will convince people, and in the next 5 years, Europe will be under EPP leadership in good hands. Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you very much, Prime Ministers, President, and now, as we promised, a interactive, open, transparent discussion so that we see what is really behind. What was the plan that made this success stories possible? And Prime Minister Mitsotakis, if I may start with you. Of course, the Recovery Resilience Facility, the biggest package of economic support ever created at European level, more than 700 billion euros. For Greece alone, more than 30 billion euros. And we are center-right politicians, as President Weber said it. We believe in the private sector, in small, medium-sized enterprises. Therefore, the question, what are the opportunities from this new instrument, from the Recovery and Resilience Facility for the private sector, for the SMEs? How do you put them at the center of your planning? How can they benefit with loans, grants, and be part of the success story?
First of all, I think it is important to put this amount in context. Greece will end up receiving 36 billion euros from the Recovery Fund, out of which 19 billion in direct grants and approximately close to 17 billion in low-interest loans. This is a very, very significant sum. 18, as Andrei said, 18% of our GDP. We are the highest per capita recipient of financial support from the Recovery Fund. And of course, this places a lot of responsibility on our shoulders to balance between moving within the parameters of the Recovery Fund, as it was said, but also factor in our own national priorities in order to best leverage this very substantial amount of money. Let me start with the loans. It was also mentioned by Akis Kertsos before, because I think it is one of the success stories of the RRF. The low-interest loans have been extremely well received by the Greek business community, and essentially the entire allocation has already been absorbed. And these are loans that are used for productive investments. So there's a direct correlation between these low-interest loans, particularly important at a time when interest rates are high, and the productive investments made by larger companies, but also by smaller companies in order to boost their productivity and create jobs. And then when you look at the overall component of the initiatives that we have included in the Recovery Fund, it really spans the many sectors of the economy. Just give you two examples, very recent visits. I was in Western Greece approximately 10 days ago, and I visited one of the most advanced pump storage projects for storing energy by moving water essentially up and down a mountain. Incredibly critical for the stability of our electricity systems. Andrei knows that very well because they're also big into renewables. Unless you have credible storage, you cannot expand your renewable base beyond a certain point. So this is one example of a big infrastructure project related to the green transition funded by the Recovery Fund. 3 days ago, I was 10 minutes from here in a hospital. And I saw very basic restoration work done in a relatively old building, which was completely upgraded, and we're using funds from the Recovery Fund to upgrade hospital infrastructure, but also healthcare infrastructure. These are investments which have a lot of value added in terms of the jobs they create, but they really make a difference for citizens on the ground, and it is probably the best proof that the money of the recovery fund is not just being used by a few large companies, which I'm sure is an accusation you also hear in Croatia, but has a benefit that essentially touches everyone in the Greek society. And finally, because this was also mentioned by Andrei, the flexibility that was given to us by the Commission to redirect some of the funds of the recovery fund to address climate-related disasters. We had already submitted our revision to the recovery fund before the catastrophic floods struck central Greece. And then we returned back to the Commission and said, look, can we have a revision of the revision? And now we have been able to carve out 600 million for critical infrastructure work that will improve our roads and our trains. So also within this, straitjacket, we managed to extract maximum flexibility in order to use these funds also to address emergencies related to climate change. So, and of course, finally, let me stress the importance of the reforms that are related to the milestones. This is not just about, for example, when we talk about justice, this is not just about building a new justice sort of building. Important, but it is also about ensuring how we deliver justice much faster. And there are a lot of important reforms that underline this initiative related to the recovery fund, probably as important as the money itself, in order to ensure that sort of we continue down that path of sustainable growth and implement what has been my central strategy for the second term, and that is to really sort of bridge the gap with Europe and make up for the lost ground of what was essentially a lost decade.
Thank you. Prime Minister Plenković, of course, this fund is called Recovery and Resilience Fund. It's a fund which helps people, enterprises, regions in need, but it also makes us stronger. It makes our public systems, our economy stronger. As Prime Minister Mitsotakis was saying, Greece was hit by natural disasters, so was Croatia by an earthquakes. How could this fund help people, enterprises in need, and how do you use it in the transformation, in the transformative processes in Croatia? You are talking about the growth. How can you use these amounts of money to make the Croatian economy greener, more digital, stronger, more competitive?
Thank you. When it comes to the natural disasters, you had big fires and big floods. And we sent planes to help you, I think, 2 or 3 times over the past few seasons. And we had these horrible earthquakes, which require huge amount of funds in order to reconstruct with a different anti-earthquake modern standards the buildings that are in the city center of an old capital. What we did in that respect, we combined the EU Solidarity Fund, 1 billion euros, which we applied for given the big damages, plus with the additional 1.5 billion euros that we have in cooperation with the Commission reallocated for the reconstruction and also the energy efficiency of the new buildings. And here I have to really underline the level of understanding at the level of those who were managing within the Commission the Recovery and Resilience Fund for Croatia. The second biggest investment is the infrastructure for education. We are now using these funds complementary with the cohesion funds in order to build new kindergartens, new schools, elementary schools, high schools, and also higher education. In total, 2.5 billion euros into the education infrastructure. Another example is supporting business that has innovative and both digital and green elements. We are lucky to have one young Croat who is 35, who has been an inventor of the fastest electric cars in the world. And we have also brought the President of the Commission when she was in Zagreb to see his facilities and premises, and we have used this exactly to support a project of the autonomous driving, which is completely electric and completely green. So a mix of digital and green couldn't be better, with the basically future-oriented, secure traveling in urban centers. And examples like that, with combination of Repower EU, where we are now not only profiting from the LNG terminal that we have started to build in my first mandate, ended at the beginning of the second mandate, and now providing it in upgraded manner to 6.1 billion cubic meters of liquefied natural gas, not only for Croatia, because we need only 2.8, 2.9 to the maximum consumption, for the entire region, meaning Hungary, Slovenia, Austria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, even Bavaria, as Manfred knows. So we have combined this for our energy security, for our competitiveness in terms of future education, for our innovative projects that bring Croatia in line with the fourth industrial revolution ambitions, and therefore will make us more resilient to future crises and challenges. And I think this exercise has been unique. I hope we will not have any more crises of this nature, but what we have done in such a short period of time is, I think, incredible, because all of us who know how good administration you need to have, how good projects you need to have, how proper the public procurement procedures should be, and the absorption capacity in order to consume the classical rules of the multi-annual financial frameworks, which are luckily still 7+3. In this way, only 5.5 years, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for administration, so we had to be fast on the last MFF, ambitions on the new MFF, efficient on the even shorter deadline of the Solidarity Fund, and use the money for the recovery and resilience. It's a bit of a strain, but it's making the economy stronger.
President Weber, you have, of course, the best overview over the whole of the European Union. You see the difference between an EPP plan and a socialist plan, or a populist government which breaks the rule of law and does not manage to access those funds at all. What is the difference between the EPP plans based on reforms, based on competitiveness, and the thinking of the left, very often just focused on spending, but not on solving the problem? What makes our EPP Prime Minister so successful when it comes to implementing and putting these funds at work for people and enterprises?
The key element is long-term perspective, sustainability. Investments are then really benefiting on the long run to all people in a society. That makes a big difference. We see in some other countries that the money is really, in a way, used for, how can I say, party political interests to serve some special communities inside of society, but there is no real long-term perspective. So energy infrastructure, digital infrastructure. I would also prioritize education, education, education. We need a young generation qualified. I'm a little bit worried that we are losing parts of our young generation. You know, we have a very well-educated part of our young generation, but the other part is also there, and we have to care about this. So that is the best investment we can do, to give our young generation a good knowledge, a good idea for the future, how they can really provide their own life in the best way. And this kind of long-term investment is, in a way, the DNA of the EPP investments. I would also add that it is extremely important that we do this always together with people. You know, we have some other elements currently on the table politically. I learned, Kyriakos, there will be also some debates here in Greece with you and some farmers' associations, for example. We have in my country, in Germany, intensive debates with farmers currently. And I can only tell you that our approach is to do all the necessary changes, all the innovation which is needed, climate change and all the things. We do this together with people, and we don't lecture them, we listen to them. We listen first of all. So that's also a quite unique way of EPP, how we manage to find a common understanding in a society where there is a need to change. And having this in mind, I think that's a typical way of EPP to do things. And Siegfried, you know, at the end, it's always about what is the outcome, what is the result, and the figures are obvious. The figures are telling the truth. EPP is doing this in the right way.
Thank you. Prime Minister Mitsotakis, you were talking about flexibility before. This was a plan designed to help, but then, of course, unexpected things happened, a natural catastrophe, and the European legislation, as was designed, gave you the possibility to go and negotiate a review of the plan to make it work. The deadlines are relatively short. Prime Minister Plenković was talking about the need to absorb the money up to 2026, and hence my question. Do you see the need now for being more flexible on the deadlines? You are front-runner countries. Can we absorb all the money up to 2026? Can the mayors finalize all projects? Or do we need a certain degree of flexibility there to make sure that as we successfully started this program, we can also successfully conclude it?
You're right, Siegfried, to point out that the deadlines are very, very strict, as is the conditionality mechanism. And as I pointed out, that is the right way because at the end of the day, we are borrowing, all of us, at the European level, a significant amount of money. And it is important for the Commission and the auditors to ensure that this money is properly spent. I think it is early to start talking about the end point of the plan. Our certain goal is to make sure that we absorb all the funds within the time framework that was agreed and to which we agreed. I don't know what will happen in 2025. I'm sure that some countries will run late, and I cannot exclude this discussion taking place at some point. But right now we are laser focused on making sure that we deliver the projects and the reforms in order to receive the money we've already received, more than 14 billion euros, and we'll receive another 3 billion over the next months within the time framework that has been agreed. The faster we absorb the money, the greater the impact on the economy. But we also have to be realistic. We knew that we had limited flexibility when we submitted our plan for the revision of the project. And if there are projects that we cannot fit in the tight deadline, they need to be financed through other means. And we've also had these discussions also with the regions and the municipalities, because one needs to understand, it was mentioned I think in the previous discussion, that the RRF is also very complementary to our structural funds, and there the regions have a big role to play. They are managing more than 8 billion euros for cohesion money at the regional level. I think for the first time we actually have a mechanism where we talk to the regional governors and we make sure that whatever we do in a coordinated manner, so that we respect the subsidiarity principle, but we also understand that there is a country strategy that needs to be more or less followed by all of us. So, too early to talk about what will happen in 2026, but particularly important, I think, for all of us at the European level to understand that this was a unique opportunity for our countries, and that if at any point we want to have a discussion what will come after the RRF, we need to deliver. And we need to make sure that we also explain to those countries which are paying for it, in the sense that they're not receiving money, that the money was put to good use. And that if Croatia or Greece progress, at the end of the day, it is also good for the richer countries, especially within the context of the single market.
Prime Minister Plenković, you made the plan fast in Croatia. You submitted it to the Commission. It respected all the rules. Commission approved it, paid pre-financing to Croatia, and 3 payments relatively fast, amongst the first countries. How are you involving the local, the regional authorities in Croatia to make sure that this is not just a plan of a politician, but a plan of the whole country, that people in the country accept it and they all contribute to making sure that the money is absorbed fast and results continue to come in Croatia?
Indeed, I would like to make one point referring to what you asked, Kyriakos. I think the approach to this instrument should not be regarded without the context of the last week's debate on the revision of the MFF. The revision of the MFF in the context of negotiations among the member states proved, in terms of results, with less appetite for fresh financing. At the end of the day, out of the 65 billion euros worth revision, I think it was only 22 billion euros as fresh money. This is an important signal. So we have managed to reallocate, to be smart, intelligent, how to use the various rooms for flexibility in the existing 7-year budget in order to provide 50 billion euros for next 48 months for Ukraine as an important political statement. But you could see between the lines some reservations, let's say, in the context of the frugals, which were very popular a couple of years ago when we discussed the MFF planning and the entire financing. So there are two perspectives. Those of us, and I will read just that we understand who are the successful countries. The successful countries are Italy, Croatia, Spain, Portugal, Slovakia, Greece, Romania, and France. And Slovakia was fast until recently. These are the countries who are really doing well. Other countries are doing far less well. Some are almost not using the possibilities at all, like Sweden and Netherlands. So we should not neglect that. That's why the whole debate, probably in the course of, let's say, after this summer, after the European elections, because there will be a new institutions, new commission, we'll have to see what we are going to do. With the implementation, we'll have to check on how successful the instrument was. Did we involve, as you say, the local and regional authorities to the level which was needed? We did our maximum effort, because concept of the regional development is to have all of our parts of our countries more or less in the same chances position. And that's why instruments like this can help us to speed up the level of development of those who were deprived before. And that's why we have tried to calibrate that the funds which are being used are not only centralized in terms of big cities, important big regions, but also those who are smaller. That's why we have brought them into the picture of preparation, of implementation, and of efficiency. And that's why we are keeping a good eye on the dynamics of this realization. So far, it seems to be good. For instance, in the 2024, we should have a huge increase of the total payments. It should be even around to the amount of 2.4 billion euros, which is huge for a country of our size, 4 million people, that you managed to absorb efficiently 2.4 billion euros coming from the EU funds on top of the regular financing. So it will be a challenging time and a battle with the deadlines that is coming.
President Weber, as we're coming close to the end of our discussion, last word, last question to you. Of course, these were 5 successful years for the EPP, 5 good years for Europe in spite of the crisis which hit us from outside. We stayed united, we delivered, we helped people in need, inside the EU, but also outside, like in Ukraine, understanding that helping Ukraine means helping ourselves. A safe Ukraine is essential for a safe European Union. What is the perspective for the economy, for the enterprises, and for the people that we as EPP are giving now ahead of the European elections? And where are we better than the left, the extreme left, and the populists?
Before going on this, I think the consideration how to convince all Europeans that our solidarity approach in the Recovery Fund works is an extremely important question, because we did it the first time, and that's why we have now to give the proof that it works. Again, Croatia, Greece are a perfect example for this, that it makes sense. And we have to continue to work on the understanding that investing in Europe together is of benefit for all of us. I know that when it's about budget, everybody looks on his own budget and about his own money. But to understand that investment all over Europe makes a European engine, in a way, for all of us beneficially. So that is, I think, a common understanding to become also from this point of view more European is the way to go for us as EPP. And because Jan is in front of me, I also want to underline that the EU budget is a budget of investments. So we are having a lot of funds which are investment funds. Recovery fund is the best example, but also cohesion and other fields are really investment budgets. So we are future budget, and also I have to add rural area budgets. It's also important for cohesion, for the question of farmers and so on, that we should underline this. And about your main question about what is then in front of us for the next years, well, I think that the next 5 years will be quite historic. We see some quite worrisome developments the last days in Washington, in the Congress, the question whether a democratic parliament like the Congress is ready to arrive to a majority to support our Ukrainian friends. What will happen if Trump arrives again in White House? What will happen to our security? I think you as Greeks, you can be very proud about your army, about what you did in defense. You're very, very strong on this, but all Europe is not strong on this, let's be honest. And that's why there are a lot of very fundamental questions in front of us. And the battle will be whether the extreme, who are only creating fears, concerns, anger inside of our societies, will succeed. Or we continue as today with the model of a left-leaning, ideologically driven approach of doing politics. Or, as I said it already, the center, the bridge builders, those who believe that innovation is needed, but also, in a way, listening, a conservative approach to society is important. We have jobs, but we also have a social dimension. We want to be innovative on Green Deal, but we also need economic strength. So to bring things together, that's what we offer. And that's why I can only appeal to everyone, take the 9th of June, take the European elections serious. There is a lot at stake. We have to guarantee that the next European Parliament will still institutionally function and not become a dysfunctional structure like we see it in other democracies. So a lot is at stake, and people can trust in us that finally, with Nea Dimokratia, with HDZ, with the two parties on the ground, we can deliver. People can trust in us that we deliver a good stability future for Europe.
President Weber, Prime Minister Mitsotakis, Prime Minister Plenković, thank you very much. And now last word goes to Vangelis Meimarakis to close the event and to invite us all for lunch.
If you can sit a little bit. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Κυρίες και κύριοι, θέλω να ευχαριστήσω πάρα πολύ καταρχήν όλους τους συντελεστές της σημερινής μας εκδήλωσης και από το EPP και από τη Νέα Δημοκρατία. Θέλω να ευχαριστήσω τους εκλεκτούς ομιλητές μας, οι οποίοι βρέθηκαν σήμερα εδώ και μας διαφώτισαν για την ευρωπαϊκή μας πορεία για τα επόμενα 5 χρόνια. Θέλω να διαβεβαιώσω τον Μάνφρεντ Βέμπερ ότι εδώ μέσα, Μάνφρεντ, χτυπάει η καρδιά της Νέας Δημοκρατίας ευρωπαϊκά και ότι θα είμαστε και πάλι το πρώτο μεγάλο κόμμα μέσα στο EPP. Ακριβώς γιατί η Νέα Δημοκρατία είναι το κόμμα το οποίο έβαλε την Ελλάδα στην Ευρώπη με τον Κωνσταντίνο Καραμανλή όταν όλοι οι άλλοι θέλανε να μην μπει η Ελλάδα. Ο Κωνσταντίνος Μητσοτάκης υπέγραψε το Μάστριχτ και η Ελλάδα προχώρησε και είναι χαρά μου που είδα εδώ τον Τίμο τον Χριστοδούλου που είχε κάνει εκείνη τη συμφωνία. Και τώρα ο Κυριάκος Μητσοτάκης, ένας αξιόλογος και σοβαρός πρωθυπουργός στο Συμβούλιο Πρωθυπουργών, ο οποίος ανέβασε το κύρος της Ελλάδας. Σας το λέω γιατί όταν το 2019 πήγαμε εκεί, πήγαμε με πολύ σκυμμένο κεφάλι, ξέρει ο πρόεδρος, με καλή συνεργασία με τον πρόεδρο και το γραφείο του, με μια δεμένη ομάδα στην Ευρωβουλή, με καλή συνεργασία με το Υπουργείο Εξωτερικών και τη ΜΕΑ. Και κυρίως με όλους εσάς που μας δώσατε αυτή τη δύναμη, μπορέσαμε σήμερα να έχουμε μια πολύ σοβαρή και αξιόπιστη φωνή. Έχουμε τον Πρωθυπουργό που με τις προτάσεις του πείθει το Συμβούλιο Κορυφής. Έχουμε για πρώτη φορά αντιπρόεδρο στην Ευρωπαϊκή Επιτροπή, τον Μαργαρίτη το Σχοινά. Και να πω κιόλας, Πρόεδρε, ότι τη στιγμή που ένα αναρμόδιο όργανο έρχεται να μας κρίνει, η Κοινοβουλευτική Συνέλευση του Συμβουλίου της Ευρώπης εκλέγει Έλληνα πρόεδρο και δείχνει εμπιστοσύνη στην Ελλάδα με τον Θόδωρο Ρουσόπουλο. Είναι ένα σημαντικό γεγονός αυτό. Θέλω να σας παροτρύνω, επειδή υπάρχουν και οι εκλογές μπροστά μας και επειδή πολλοί σκέφτονται ότι πιθανόν να μην χρειάζεται να πάνε να ψηφίσουν, είναι χαλαρή η ψήφος. Άλλωστε είναι η πρώτη φορά που οι εθνικές εκλογές έχουν προηγηθεί. Όλες τις άλλες φορές πηγαίναμε στις ευρωεκλογές για να πείσουμε να προχωρήσουμε στις εθνικές. Το ίδιο έγινε και το 9 και το 14 και το 19. Τώρα οι εκλογές έχουν γίνει. Η Νέα Δημοκρατία και ο Κυριάκος Μητσοτάκης έχουν πάρει την εντολή μέχρι το 27 και θα κυβερνούν όπως πρέπει για το καλό της χώρας και των Ελλήνων πολιτών. Αυτό όμως λέει σε ορισμένους ότι εντάξει, δεν χρειάζεται ίσως, ή να πάμε πιο χαλαρά ή να μην πάμε καθόλου και να απέχουμε. Όχι, γιατί για να συνεχιστεί αυτή η πορεία, επειδή το Ευρωπαϊκό Κοινοβούλιο πλέον έχει πάρα πολλές αρμοδιότητες, είναι συνομοθέτης, εγκρίνει την Επιτροπή, εγκρίνει τα σχέδια, δίνει ψήφο εμπιστοσύνης, και για να γίνουν αυτά που αναφέρθηκαν τώρα στην επόμενη πενταετία οι αξιότιμοι συνομιλητές μας, πρέπει το EPP να είναι η κυρίαρχη πολιτική δύναμη και να συμφωνήσουμε ώστε να έχουμε και πάλι στο Συμβούλιο, στην Επιτροπή, στις αρμόδιες θέσεις ανθρώπους οι οποίοι έχουν τις δικές μας αντιλήψεις, τις δικές μας απόψεις και μπορούν να συνεννοηθούμε και να συνεργαστούμε. Γι' αυτό έχει ιδιαίτερη σημασία να πάμε να ψηφίσουμε. Καταλάβαμε όλοι σήμερα ότι τα έργα τα οποία γίνονται είναι με πόρους της Ευρώπης. Καταλάβαμε ότι αντιμετωπίσαμε την πανδημία με το Ταμείο Ανάκαμψης. Καταλάβαμε ότι για πρώτη φορά συνολικά η Ευρώπη δανείστηκε και όχι κάθε μία χώρα ξεχωριστά. Καταλάβαμε ότι χωρίς την Ευρώπη δεν μπορούμε να ζήσουμε. Μα κάποιοι δεν τους αρέσει. Ναι, εδώ είμαστε να τη βελτιώσουμε. Και θα τη βελτιώσουμε με τις ερχόμενες εκλογές, γιατί η Νέα Δημοκρατία θα είναι πρώτη δύναμη στη χώρα και ταυτόχρονα το Ευρωπαϊκό Λαϊκό Κόμμα θα μπορέσει να έχει την πλειοψηφία στις έδρες των βουλευτών. Τη σημερινή εκδήλωση με το Μάνφρετ Σίγκριτ, ο οποίος είναι ο αντιπρόεδρος του Group και του EPP και πράγματι δίνει τη μάχη για να έχουμε περισσότερες έδρες του Ευρωπαϊκού Λαϊκού Κόμματος, θα την επαναλάβουμε εκτός από αύριο στη Θεσσαλονίκη με τον αγαπητό φίλο τον Απόστολο Τζιτζικώστα σε όλες τις πρωτεύουσες της Ευρώπης. Θα πάμε παντού. Θα πάμε και θα βρεθούμε κοντά στον Ευρωπαίο πολίτη. Πρέπει να δώσουμε απάντηση στους λαϊκιστές και στους ακραίους οι οποίοι δεν θέλουν την Ευρώπη των πολιτών, την Ευρώπη η οποία μας πάει μπροστά. Εμείς είμαστε Έλληνες με ευρωπαϊκή συνείδηση, θα τους δώσουμε τον πολιτισμό μας, θα τους δείξουμε τη δημοκρατία μας και θα προχωρήσουμε μπροστά. Με τη Νέα Δημοκρατία και με τον Κυριάκο Μητσοτάκη. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ για την παρουσία σας σήμερα.